Thank you so much for watching Smart 24 TV and a very warm welcome back to the program. Today we are talking sports, and today I'm the only one in a suit on set today because we are literally talking sports and nothing like policy, whatever. But we are still with Dr. Rukari, who is, of course, the Uganda Olympic Committee president. And Dr. Rukari, here, I want to draw your attention to the fact that Uganda in the Tokyo Games performed extremely well.
Yeah.
And I have to appreciate your committee. I know there was a lot of effort that was put in there. Things don't just happen like that. But there is a mismatch between the potential we have in as regards as the sports and the funding government is putting in place. For example, in the year 2019-2020 budget, we're only given about 26 billion, and the Ministry of Education and Sports was given over 3.28 trillion, and just 26 billion for the sports sector. But that has declined as well in the last 3 years, from 25 or 26 to 17 billion, and then now to 10 billion. I don't know how much further we are going to go. But this is in the opposition to the fact that sports is growing. People are bringing medals home. I mean, for Christ's sake, a medal is not something we see on an everyday basis. I think we last had what we did in Tokyo in 1956 when we were, the first time we went into the Olympics.
Well, we had Stephen Kiprotich winning in London, and a few others, yes.
But 4 medals.
Oh, okay.
And there are 4 medals, the number.
Yes.
Yes. So why the mismatch? Why are we seeing the improvement in the games and people putting in a lot of effort, yet less finance?
But I think, Anthony, let's first agree that I think the word mismatch is also mismatched in a way, because we have to appreciate that Uganda is a low-income country. Some people might want to argue that if you plot the top 20 economies in the world, is there a relationship between the way a country is doing, economically and sport? So the level of GDP vis-a-vis sport, vis-a-vis other things like investment in health, education. So you could have that debate. But let's put that debate to the one side. Let's look at Uganda. For me, where I sit, it's a question of saying, is the glass half full or half? To me, it is. Why? When we look at the trends, you've just been talking about the trends, there is no doubt that, notwithstanding COVID, the interest and support from the government, right from His Excellency the President to our current Minister of Education and Sports, the First Lady, to our direct Minister of Sport, Honorable Ogwan. There is no doubt that, and also Parliament and other actors, the interest and support for sport is growing. It's just that COVID brought in, and this is not only affecting sports, it's affecting all sectors. But notwithstanding the impact of COVID, the budgetary aspects, when you look at maybe 10 years ago, it was probably less than 400 million for the entire sports sector. We saw an exponential growth of support for sports, as you're indicating, maybe around 2019, 2020, with an uptick in support. 2021, 2020, when we came into National Council of Sports, we're standing at about, I think, 25 billion. It went up to 45 now. It has been slightly cut. So there is no doubt that from the government perspective, the interest and support is growing. Is it where it should be? No. But there's no doubt that we have to compete for funding with other sectors: tourism sector, education, health, infrastructure, security, public administration. But for me, where I stand, there is no doubt that the interest and support from government is growing. It could be better, and I think we're still making a case for it, and we'll see it improve further once the overall economy improves and we come out of COVID. And also, there's another aspect of, not only are we looking at government support, but we're looking at other revenue streams. So we would like to see the private sector playing a more important role, and they're doing that. So again, we can begin to track the numbers. From the perspective of the Olympic Committee, we have seen in the last 2 years more interest from partners like Sanam, APSA, Milk, people like MTN has also come in some of the specific sports like athletics, Nile Breweries in rugby, and others. So we are beginning to see that as we stabilize and as we strengthen our sports structures, the government support is also being complemented by the private sector. But as we are going to discuss, there's also the business aspect. TV is coming in quite strong. So we need to see that world over, sport is primarily driven by broadcasting revenues, by revenue from the private sector. For example, in the US, which is a much bigger economy, of course, Uganda is not the US, we acknowledge that. But in the US, sport is primarily funded by the private sector. There's very limited government intervention. In Germany, almost the same. So we need to strike the balance that, yes, we need to have more support from government and in areas that can help us professionalize sports, that eventually we begin to see that ratio, in my view, tilting more in favor of support from the private sector, support from the media. Then government support is more helping things like policy and other things. But ultimately, if you're doing a professional sport, if you enter into a professional bout in boxing, in basketball, in the NBA, we don't see a lot of government involvement, but it should be able to propel itself and pay for itself. So to me, Anthony, I think it's improving, it could be better, and we need to keep making the argument for slightly more support to the sports sector.
Well, talking about still the sports sector and financing, the Ministry of Education and Sports, that marriage between the education and sports, don't you think it's working to the detriment of the sports sector? Because always the education ministry has overshadowed the sports in terms of financing and even attention being given to it. And we've seen, I don't know if you know of any countries that have an entirely separate sports ministry where you have ministers in cabinet sitting on the floor of parliament just for sports. And this has also been, of course, incorporated in the bill currently that's in parliament, which, of course, at first was the National Sports Bill, now is the Physical Activity and Sports Bill. Do you think more has to be done to divorce that marriage between the education ministry and the sports?
It's interesting. We have had those debates.
Yes.
And I think there is merits for both. Some people say we have too many ministries. So is it by breaking it up, do you necessarily mean that you'll get more funding? That would be one aspect of saying if we had our own standalone ministry. Some countries do. I think the Kingdom of Bahrain and a few others have dedicated ministry of sports. A number of them in Africa tend to twin sports either under culture, youth, under that docket. However, for me, whichever way we go, whether we go for an individual standalone ministry, or even the sports authority, some people have that, or being under the current configuration, the question is to still try and make a case. I don't know whether if the assumption is that if you're separate, you get more money. I don't know if that assumption holds true.
You get more attention.
Well, attention can come from different ways. I agree. As I said, it's an interesting debate, but I know very many standalone ministers are not getting a lot of support. So the issue to me is about growing the revenue basket, to me. And then you can begin having that discussion. I think it's a good discussion to have, but to me, I would rather say that let us try and still make a case for sport, irrespective of whether we're under Ministry of Education and Sports, or whether we are standalone, or whether we put under Ministry of Gender. The question will be, do people still appreciate the value of sport. And it behoves us in the sport industry to keep making that case, to show that by engaging in sports, there are very many benefits that accrue not only to the sports people, but to the economy. So, for example, sport will contribute to taxation. I think we have now currently a small estimate was done. We have over maybe 1,500 to 2,000 people employed in the different value chains of sport, whether it's at the club level, at the federation level, at the school level. So people who are involved in sport could easily be slightly. We need to get the actual numbers. So people, it's people taxed. People create revenue and income. Yeah, it's a source of employment. So there are very many aspects that sports actually plays, which we need to keep amplifying and not just look at sport as a consumptive sector. And once that is clearly appreciated by all of us, then I think whether we are under the ministry or whether we are standalone, then, and I think people are beginning to realize. I'll give you one small example. When Uganda, 5 minutes from here, hosted the World Junior Cross Country Championships,
Yes.
we had the whole world here. So when the whole world came here for athletics, over 100 countries or so, 80 countries, over 300, 400 people coming here for a week. So let's extrapolate that. Rugby had the same thing recently, last year. 15 countries, 300 athletes. Swimming, 10 countries, 400 athletes. So when these people come to a country as a starting point, Anthony, one, they stay in hotels. So the hotel industry benefits. They eat our food. They'll buy our internet and use our telephone services. They'll use taxis. Yeah, they might shop in our crafts village. They'll use so they're in the taxi industry. So the total effect in the economy is great. So I think the study that was done showed that particular event for athletics brought into Uganda close to $2 million. Yes. Swimming, we did a small analysis. It brought about $300,000 into the economy. Yeah. So we need to keep doing this more deliberately and grow this to scale where we have Qatar has, imagine what the World Cup did for it. They can easily host. So we need to have a conversation with the hotel industry. Say, do we have enough beds priced at the appropriate price?
Yeah.
In sports, we normally look at $100, as the kind of standard that most were willing to pay, or maybe full board. So do we have appropriate, safe accommodation for different price ranges? Do we have a good stable internet, which we do in Uganda compared to most African countries? Do we have a road network? Are we safe? We're happy that the Ebola was declared gone so that people can come. So to me, Anthony, there are different aspects of the sporting industry that can be demonstrated to contribute to the economy, and therefore, in many ways, make the argument that sport is definitely a viable industry to engage in. Right from how many people are you employing? Let's look at a game. From a game, it's not just a game that you watch. There are security people, stewards, stadium announcers, physiotherapists, health people, security, people behind running the maintenance of the stadium. So there are very many people involved in this industry of sport beyond just the players themselves. And therefore, the people who are actually employed, and I think that's what we need to keep making that argument. We need to keep showing these numbers to the people in the policy-making corridor so that they can appreciate that sport is not just about kicking that plastic ball. That image needs to be dispelled, and we can show that actually by investing in sport, the hotel industry will win, the tour. Even let's go to media. I'm going to give an example. I was going to give it. When Kiprotich won his gold medal, yes, Stephen Kiprotich, the London Marathon that day, it's estimated that a TV audience of over 3 billion watched the Uganda flag being raised. Yeah. If you had to pay for that on CNN, how much would you pay? So even the value in kind that sport brings. When Joshua Cheptegei won and they played his medal, even during COVID, it was over 2.5 billion people watching on TV and another billion on social media. And we're beginning to see this change, that even the image of the country is changing. I can tell this. When we used to travel and you'd go to places, say, you're from Uganda. Oh, you're the people of Idi Amin. He's our biggest, one of our biggest brand.
Yes.
But now this is changing. Oh, you're the guys from Joshua Cheptegei's country.
Yeah.
Or Perth. So even we need to begin showing that even from the value of exposing and amplifying what our good country has. We're also contributing the sports tourism. So there are very many things. The Boston Marathon is something that everybody aspires to. So even the MTN Marathon here is growing. I think now it has over 30,000 athletes who take part, and it's growing. And I think athletes from different parts of the world. So over time, if we remain stable, and I think that's why we have to thank the current regime, that with the stability that we have. Without stability, you cannot have sport. So stability is important, security is important, and all these things are related. So for example, Anthony, if they say there's an Ebola outbreak, people will not show up. So it's good that now we're even having a very strong Minister of Health. Ebola has been declared gone, so now people can
come into the country.
Yes. So all these things work in an integrated fashion. And I think for us, what we'd like to argue is that sport is one of those enabling sectors that can absorb the youth that we have. We have close to 75% of our youth below the age of 16, I'm told. So even sport can be an avenue to engage youth in interesting activities and profitable activities, which hopefully can demonstrate that it can take them off the street, out of crime, off drugs, all these things, this society problem that we are facing. Sport can be one of those contributors to creating a responsible citizen and ultimately also contribute to the economy.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with you. But let's look at, for example, the Olympics.
Yeah.
Now we want to look at the economic benefits to, first of all, the individual athletes who are participating in these games. Are we having like a sort of structure, a salary structure so far in place or something like that? In that, for example, if someone, a kid is in Captura, where we know many athletes come from, they know that if I'm working in my school and I'm probably 16, 17, I'm maybe in senior six, I'm trying to get school fees, I know if I go run on track, I'm going to get this benefit. Not just the trophy. Besides the trophy and the medal, are there things that have been formally put in place as rewards for our sportsmen?
We are doing it, it's being done mainly through the National Council of Sports and people like that, because that's the way it comes. But let's first go slowly. The platform under which the Olympics is built wasn't built on primarily an economic benefit for the direct athlete. Of course, the Olympics is a very big property. It generates income from the broadcast rights, which is plowed back into supporting the athletes and national Olympic committees worldwide to qualify for the Olympics. But at the actual Olympics themselves, they don't get a prize. And this is a debate that has been had, that we shouldn't we make it more prize driven. So it's more what comes with that win and that exposure. So for many people, the platform that the Olympics brings would lead them to getting into some other financial gain. So for example,
I remember Kiprotich now, I think, was a brand name for
things like that. Yeah. So if you're an Olympic champion,
yes,
what are possible opportunities? The possible opportunities, one, like in the case of Uganda, we build into the budgets that there will be a recognition and award. So there will an award given. So we, for example, I think last year, 50 million each. People won gold medals, and 30, 20 in that regard. There's a presidential offer of 5 million for a gold, 3 million for a silver,
and that's monthly.
It's monthly.
Wow.
From the president, from the president himself.
Yes.
He gives them. Some people are given cars, others are given houses, and other countries have different models. Yeah. Okay. But from that, you can also get into the exposure of running, or let's say athletics, or boxing, or swimming. Being a world champion, world Olympic champion, then you can actually get into the professional ranks of running marathons, where if you're the Olympic champion or world champion, you get an appearance fee, you will get prize money if you win. So for some people who are able to transition into the more professional elite version, then you can actually do it as a way of life and earn considerable amounts of money. Haile Selassie in Ethiopia is one of the richest people. He owns properties coming out of Athletics. And he has actually inspired other people to join. In Kenya, we have the same. Here in Uganda, it's also happening. A lot of our athletes are now being able to run professionally and earn a living from that. You can also go to the corporate world where you said you become a brand ambassador for particular companies. And that's why it's what we're trying to argue for is having a totality of the industry. It's not just only the government side. So we need to have the economy doing well, and that's why COVID affected us. So some companies will pick up some of the athletes as brand ambassadors. Others will pick you up as someone to promote their activities. So it's important that even under the new law, where we said that this issue of image rights, commercialization is now being tackled. Should people be able to use your image without you benefiting from it? And it's the same thing and to me, it's about growth. We are seeing this in the music and entertainment industry. Before it wasn't as vibrant as it is now, but now it's about if you're writing your songs, you're performing your songs, you can get revenue. And we're seeing that now the Ugandan artists have begun to see some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of being able to make a living from their talent and their craft. The same thing in sport. What our challenge is, I'm not saying we have arrived, but we need to grow this to scale now. So we're seeing some people now playing in clubs and getting paid. In football, we have clubs, people get paid. In volleyball, we have clubs. In basketball, we have clubs. In rugby, we have clubs. Swimming is slightly different. People pay to be in a club. But slowly, as we grow this to scale, then you begin to say, yes, you can actually go play basketball for the Oilers, or for Name Blazers, or for JK Dolphins, and you get paid. Well, I don't think they're yet being paid optimum salaries as they should, but it's where we're heading. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to take another very quick break, and we're still talking with Mr. David, Mr. Donald. Your son is called David, right?
Correct.
Yes. So we are talking about the sports industry and its contribution towards the Uganda's economy and the commercialization of sport in Uganda. Now we're going to return with the different games, the types of games here in Uganda, where we are exploring more and more. And there are those that we haven't actually gotten into so much seriously. And Mr. Donald will do us justice here by giving us a mention of those. My name is Anthony. You're watching The Point. Stay with us. We'll be right back.